of you. Today is my second lecture, and we'll continue where we left yesterday. However, there was a question on Cauchy's inequality about the best possible inequality. So I have a solution now. So let me present that, then we can move to maximum modulus. I mean, whatever some material to prove the maximum modulus principle, so that uniqueness theorem actually we started for power series that we'll begin with. So this was the Cauchy's inequality, right? Nth derivative at Z0, where Z0 is the center of the circle. And f has bounded, f has upper bound on C on this circle, then we had this inequality. Then what happened? Question was whether this inequality is the best or not. And here is a solution, very trivial solution. This inequality will become equality if we take this function f of z is just z power n we take any circle centered at origin radius r. So z0 is 0, that means, and radius is r. Arbitrarily one can choose. So then for this function actually equality holds. Therefore this inequality cannot be improved further because there is a function for which equality holds. One can verify because nth derivative is actually n factorial at origin. So left hand side we will have n factorial, and then m is a capital M is actually equal to r, right? R power n. R power n, and this denominator r power n will get cancelled because here I have taken capital R and there it was small r. So left hand side we have n factorial, right hand side also we have n factorial. So equality holds. So therefore we cannot improve. But on the other hand, just in case we did not have any function where this equality holds, then we could have tried to improve, but still some doubt were occurring, like for proving certain applications of Cauchy's inequality is what we have discussed yesterday. Whether those things will happen further or not, there will be questions. But in any case, now problem is solved. So this is actually the best possible. So therefore, this inequality cannot be improved. Okay. So I hope this answers to yesterday's question. Now, uniqueness theorem for a disk. Uniqueness theorem for a disk, yesterday we discussed. Let me recall this. Like f is analytic in a disk center A, radius r. And then Zn is a sequence of points inside this disk. But this is converging to the center. Now, if this f of Zn is 0, this sequence, f of Zn is 0, then automatically this theorem says that, uniqueness theorem says that for all point it will also go to the same unique point 0. So everywhere in the disk f will be vanishing. That is the uniqueness theorem for a disk. So we have discussed the proof yesterday. So after this we go some kind of generalizing this concept to arbitrary domain. In fact, there was a question, if a sequence is converging to some other interior point, then whether this question, this theorem is still valid or not. The answer was yes. So that part we will be discussing today, even for general domain. Before that, one result is required, like zeros are isolated. This result says zeros are isolated. So that means if f is analytic at a point, point is given, so let's say A here, then analytic at a point, that means it is differentiable in some neighborhood of that point. Okay, so neighborhood business is coming. Then these two possibilities will occur. Like f is identically equal to 0 in some neighborhood of A. This situation may occur in some neighborhood of A. It will be identically equal to 0. It takes to 0. Or if that is not happening, then this will happen. It will be non-zero, just opposite. This will be non-zero in some punctured disk. In the punctured disk, this will be non-zero. It's coming to other points. So these are the two possibilities. So therefore, it is called actually zeros are isolated. So let us try to prove this. So we prove like this. Suppose the second condition does not hold, then we prove the first condition holds. Then proof will be, then that's the proof. Okay. Suppose second does not hold. Of course, one can also assume that one doesn't hold. Then one can prove second holds. So either one is fine. So here in the proof I'm giving you, suppose second is not happening, second part, then automatically first part will happen because they are just opposite. Okay. This is what written. We assume the second does not hold. That means f is non-vanishing in some deleted neighborhood. Then we prove that, okay, sorry. Yeah. The second is not happening. Okay. So then we have to prove that that is, first one is actually happening. For this, what we do, suppose there does not exist any R. The second one is what? There exists, second one is f is non-zero or f is non-vanishing in some punctured disk. The second case you can see here. F is non-vanishing in some punctured disk. What is, if we say that this second part does not hold, that means we cannot find any R such that f is non-zero. That is the meaning. So that means this is happening here. Suppose there does not exist any R such that f is non-zero. That is the negation. That means in each punctured disk, like this, epsilon is arbitrary here. In each punctured disk, f of z is vanishing, right? Because we are not finding any, on contrary, or sorry, on the negation of this second part, we are not finding any R such that f is non-vanishing. That means whatever punctured disk we take, f will be vanished. Okay. So therefore, for in each punctured disk, f will be vanishing. So then, in particular, epsilon we can choose like 1 over n. In particular, for epsilon equal to 1 over n, in each punctured disk, because n is also varying from 1 to infinity. So therefore, in each punctured disk, this is the punctured disk. Yeah, please.
Sir, in the second line, we have assumed that fz not equal to 0 in some punctured disk of A around A.
Yeah,
And
there
in
is
the next
no
line,
R. There is no R. We
yes,
cannot
sir.
find any R such that f is non-zero.
Yes, sir. And in the next line, we have written that fz is identically equal to 0 for every punctured neighborhood.
Yeah.
But will it be the if identically equal to 0 or fz equal to 0?
Both are same. That means for every z, when we say f of z equal to 0 for every z in the punctured disk, that means f is identically equal to 0 on that. On that. That is the meaning. Right?
Okay, okay, sir.
So therefore, in particular, if we choose epsilon equal to 1 by n, so we can find a sequence of points Zn such that f of Zn is 0 for each n, because we are saying in each punctured disk, f is actually equal to 0. That means if we choose epsilon equal to 1 by n, so we can find some sequence of points Zn such that for those Zn also, f of Zn is 0 for each n. Right? So therefore, here you see Zn actually tends to A. In this disk, Zn tends to A when n tends to infinity, isn't it? Then, by uniqueness theorem for a disk, f will be identically equal to 0 in some neighborhood of z equal to A. In fact, here in this neighborhood. So therefore, we can conclude that, f is identically equal to 0 in some neighborhood of A. So what was the uniqueness theorem for disk? So we had a sequence of points converging to center, and if f of Zn is 0, therefore we have here also f of Zn is 0 for each n in that neighborhood, then f will be identically equal to 0 in that neighborhood. So therefore we are getting some neighborhood of A where f is identically equal to 0. So therefore, theorem is proved because we assume the second part does not hold, and then we proved the first part. Therefore, either one actually will hold. So this is, so any question? Please ask if you have any question. Or
Sir,
yeah.
Sir, in third line, we get that fz is identically 0 in some disk, punctured disk.
Yeah, in each punctured disk, yes, such disk.
So that is the conclusion also. So we got that in third line only. After all, we are proving the same thing in last line.
Sir, in the third line, I think we can write
No,
that
here
as...
you see, here you see third line is actually punctured disk, but conclusion should be in the whole neighborhood of that point. That means at A also equal to 0. Okay. So in third line, Z equal to A is excluded. Remember. Okay. But uniqueness theorem says that Z equal to A is also included. That is the difference. All right?
Yes.
Sir, third line is equivalent to saying that in every deleted neighborhood of A contains a 0 of
Sorry,
fz,
can
right?
you please be louder?
Sir, the third line is equivalent to that, equivalent to saying that every deleted neighborhood of A contains a 0 of fz, right?
Yes.
So is that equivalent of writing fz is identically equal to 0?
F is identically equal to 0 in this punctured disk, we can say. Or you can say f of
So
z is 0 in this punctured disk. Both are same.
Yes, sir.
See, yeah, what is the meaning of identically equal to 0? That means f of z equal to 0 for every z in a set. That means f is identically equal to 0 in that set. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So in that sense, it is written. In that sense, we understand. Okay. Not necessarily that at z equal to a also this is vanishing. No. In this punctured disk, it is the meaning. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me move to the next page. So here the main theorem is coming, the uniqueness theorem for arbitrary domains. Actually, this concept is, yeah, please.
I have one doubt.
Yeah.
In the previous result, we have proved for all n, or there is some specific neighborhood.
Now, this is true for all n. I have taken, in fact, you can choose some specific n also, doesn't matter. But this will be valid for each n. For each n, whatever n you take, it will be valid. But we need actually one of such n, because in some neighborhood of z equal to a, we need. So you can also fix one n, that doesn't matter. But problem is here.
Infinitely many neighborhoods, right?
See, problem is here, if you fix some n, then you cannot claim that Zn tends to a as n tends to infinity. So n has to be variable here. 1 by n has to be variable. So that if you take Zn, the sequence, this limit is actually a when n tends to infinity. But essentially, since this is valid enough for all n, so we are getting one of such n, where f is identically equal to 0, right?
Okay, no, my question is not just for n. We got infinitely many neighborhoods.
No, here I think voice is not clear. Maybe some background sound is coming. Can you repeat, please?
Sir, in the third step, I feel that there exists a z such that there exists a z in the open disk such that f of z equal to 0.
Yeah.
That means f of z is not identically equal to 0. There exists a point z in the open disk such that f of z equal to 0.
Suppose
there exists for every r f of z not equal to 0 in the whole disk. That means for every epsilon, there exists at least one point in the disk such that f of z equal to 0. for that, in this way, epsilon equal to 1 by n for every disk, there exists a point Zn such that f of Zn equal to 0. So the sequence Zn converges to A. In this manner, I feel that.
No, see, if we say that, actually, the statement, actually, one statement, its opposite is the second statement. It talks about the whole. Because if we say there exists a point Z,
Yes, sir.
such that f of Z is 0. Suppose
After that, we apply the uniqueness theorem in the
no. Let's see.
Okay.
Suppose there exists a point Z0, so that f of Z0 is 0. Okay, in third line. Suppose we make like that. Then what happens? How to choose the sequence Zn? For each n you can find. Yeah, for
Yes,
each
sir.
n we can find. Yes.
Yes.
For one n we can for n equal to 1 we can find
For
Z1.
each n, yes, sir.
Yeah. For n equal to 2 we can find. Yes. That is also fine. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Third line is not the negation of the second line.
Yes, sir.
Yes. You're right.
Yes, sir. That's what I was talking.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make this correction. Thanks for pointing out this.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So in each punctured disk, so we can find a point so that f is vanishing at that point.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Then for each n we can find Zn. Okay. So that this is vanishing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah, so before circulating this, I'll make this correction. Yeah. Good. So the uniqueness theorem now says here, suppose that f is analytic in a domain. Domain is given here. And Zn is a sequence of distinct points converging to some point A inside the domain. That is most important. A has to be interior point. The same way, now if f is vanishing at Zn's, then f will be identical equal to 0 throughout the domain. That means f of Z equal to 0 for all Z in the domain. Okay, so this is the uniqueness theorem for arbitrary domains. Okay. So this answers to the question asked yesterday. So if we take the sequence of points not converging to the center of the circle, but converging to some other point in the circle, then also this theorem is valid. So this uniqueness theorem for arbitrary domains actually gives the answer. Let us try to prove this. Proof is not difficult, but we can see. Now, we need to consider the idea of the previous corollary, that is actually zeros are isolated. Like first we decompose the domain into two sets. The first set is A, where f is 0 in some neighborhood of A. If f is 0 in some neighborhood of A. Okay, and we take B just its collection of all points Z in D such that Z is not in A. So therefore, this A union B will be the whole domain D. Okay. So then A and B are actually two disjoint open sets. One can prove. Disjoint is clear. Open set is also clear. One can prove. And then this D is actually A union B happening. But D is a domain. Domain means what? It is open set and connected set. Okay. But definition of connected set says, if something like this is happening, then one of them should be actually empty set. Okay. So because D, yeah, please.
First we need to say whether B is non-empty or not. Right?
Sorry, B is
non-empty or not, we need to check.
Yeah, we are going to prove that B is empty set. Okay. Yeah, we now prove that B is actually empty set. That is the idea. So when D is connected, if we have this union of disjoint open sets, then one of them must be empty. So in this case, B will be empty set actually. So A will be non-empty, will be proving. So by definition of connectedness, either A or B must be empty set. but we can prove that there exists some element in A, but in that case, B has to be empty by the definition of connectedness. That is what we are going to prove B is empty.
Sir,
So that means, yeah, any question, please?
sir, please show the statement of corollary 3 once again.
Corollary 3, yeah. Yeah.
So fz is either identically 0 or fz is never 0 in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sir.
Okay. So, yes. Now we are going to prove that A contains a point. A contains a point. That means A is non-empty. So then it will show that B has to be empty. Okay. That means now we take a sequence in A. We take a sequence in A arbitrarily such that Zn goes to A as n tends to infinity. What is small a? What is small a? Yeah. So small a was in the statement that Zn is a sequence of points inside D such that the Zn is converging to A. A is an interior point of D. That is already in the statement. So therefore, we can, it is already there, Zn is converging to A as n tends to infinity. Now, in view of the construction of A, what it says, since f of Zn is 0, by hypothesis, f of Zn is 0 for each n. Now, it follows by the uniqueness theorem for a disk that f of z is identical equal to 0 in the neighborhood of A. Okay, by uniqueness theorem for a disk. All right. So in particular, when we are saying that f is identical equal to 0 in the neighborhood of A, that means in particular at A also f of f is 0. So therefore, by the construction of A, again, this small a has to be in the set A. So therefore, the set A is non-empty. So therefore, B has to be empty because of the connectedness of D domain. Okay. So therefore, this means that because the whole domain is actually A union B, and now B is empty, so therefore A has to be equal to D. Now construction of A says that this f of z was actually identical equal to 0 throughout A. So therefore, by the construction of A, we can say that f of z is 0 throughout the domain D. So this completes the proof. Okay. So hence, what we proved is this uniqueness theorem for arbitrary domains using the this zeros are isolated, that theorem. Okay, and of course uniqueness theorem for a disk. Any question?
Sir,
Yeah.
the sequence that we take can be outside D. I mean the
No.
elements of.
What is your question, or you are asking?
My question is, this is my question.
Yeah.
This sequence that we are taking Zn,
Mhm.
it should be inside the domain, or we can take outside.
Inside. Yeah.
So while proving that result, we took Zn from each neighborhood, right?
Sorry.
In the previous corollary, while proving the previous corollary.
Yes. There also it was inside. Yes.
But we took Zn such that this modulus is less than or equal to 1 by n, right?
Yeah.
So which neighborhood will we finally take?
Where here or in the next theorem, main theorem?
In this theorem, here we are taking Zn such that mod of Zn minus a is less than or equal to 1 by n, right?
Yeah.
Finally, Zn converges to A.
Yes.
But not all the Zn are in one neighborhood. We cannot fix n such that all the Zn are in one neighborhood.
Yeah. From those neighborhoods, you can choose either one. Doesn't matter, because just you need some neighborhood of A.
So my question is this only. in the uniqueness theorem, do we take that sequence outside the domain or it should be inside the domain?
Inside.
Okay, so suppose I fix any n, right? How can we ensure that all the Zdns are in that domain?
The
Suppose I
Zdns
fix-
are the zeros of the function.
Yeah. So by definition of function, zeros has to be inside the domain.
It's still not clear to me. My question is, in the uniqueness theorem, we take one sequence that converges to point A, right?
Hmm.
And you are saying that sequence should be inside that domain.
Yes. Those are in fact zeros of f.
Okay.
Hmm.
So if I take, if I fix n, suppose n is equal to 3 or whatever, so all the Zn should be such that mod of Zn minus A is less than or equal to 1 by 3.
No. Here actually what what we discussed, for n equal to 1, we get a point Z1. For n equal to 2, we get a point Z2. Okay. For n equal to n naught, we get a point Zn naught.
Okay.
Yeah. That way this construction, this sequence has been constructed. So we cannot take arbitrary Zn in a specific n naught here radius. So if you say n equal to 3, we are getting Z3. Z3 minus A mod is less than 1 by 3. Okay. Is that answer or still?
Okay, let me think. I'll ask later.
Yeah,
This is
so
a construction. This is a construction.
yeah, it is a construction, yes.
Okay.
So please
I'll
think about it. Okay. So anyway, so one mistake was pointed out that I will clarify. I will just correct it here, the third line. Then probably it will be clear to you. Okay. I will write very neatly so that you can understand.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so in general, this sequence has to be inside the domain. Those are actually zeros of function f. So therefore, we proved now uniqueness theorem for general domain. So now, as a consequence of the uniqueness theorem for arbitrary domains, we prove identity principle. This is also actually uniqueness theorem or uniqueness principle, or it is also called identity principle or identity theorem. Some authors write. So what does it say? Actually, this is similar behavior. Actually, the behavior of an analytic function at any sequence of points inside a domain determines the behavior of the analytic function at all points of the domain. That means whatever we discussed so far is at a sequence of points. Suppose f is vanishing, then f is vanishing throughout. So that's the behavior. Behavior at a sequence means behavior at all points under certain conditions. So this is what just in fact it's a generalization of the previous theorem. Suppose we have two functions f and g. They are analytic in a domain D, and that Zn is a sequence of distinct points having a limit point in D, or in like when we say Zn converges to a point inside the domain. So in some other wordings, some other way, it is written that Zn is a sequence of distinct points having a limit point in D. That means Zn converges to some point inside domain. There is a link with the limit point. I will show you the next page. That statement is there. Now, if f of Zn is equal to g of Zn for each n, then f is identical equal to g throughout the domain. So it is trivial, just one can consider f minus g equal to some h function, then we apply this previous theorem, then it will be done. That is the idea.
Sir,
Yeah, please.
sir, in the last proof, we saw that capital A is non-empty set.
Last proof, capital A.
Yeah, f
Yeah.
of A 0, therefore small a belongs to capital A, so it
Yeah.
is non-empty.
Yeah.
And in first line, we assume that let Zn be a sequence in A such that Zn converges to A. So here we assume that Zn is capital A is non-empty because there is a sequence in it.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, good point. Let me go back. What is the statement? Zn is a sequence in D, I think it should be D. Zn be a sequence in D such that Zn tends to A. Then construction of A, f of Zn is 0. Yeah, so Zn should be in D. So by statement, yeah, such that Zn tends to A. That is statement, it is given already. Yeah, this is one more point, yes.
No, then Fzn is 0 only when Zn belongs to A. Because
Yeah,
A,
By hypothesis that A is non-empty, na? The way we have taken the hypothesis, the capital A is non-empty set.
Then we don't need to prove A to be non-empty.
capital A is constructed. This is a collection of points such that f of z is 0 in some neighborhood of A. Okay. So, yeah. So, since f of Zn is 0 for each n, so therefore Zn has to be in A. So, we are not taking Zn in A actually. By
But sir,
definition of
why
A,
f of Zn will be
yeah,
0?
we are collecting sub points whenever f of z is 0 in some neighborhood of A. Okay. So, in fact, Zn should be in the neighborhood of A. Okay. Yeah, so it's okay, right? So we have Zn is a sequence of distinct points converging to point A. All right. So then at A, you take a neighborhood. Then since this sequence is converging to A, we can find subsequence here, which is also converging to A. So anyway, so here if we take Zn, this by hypothesis Zn has to be sequence such that Zn tends to A. Now what happens, since f of Zn is 0 for each n by hypothesis, then construction of A or definition of A says that this Zn has to be in A. Okay. But of course, in that case,
so by construction A is non-empty.
yeah, so there also it is coming.
Zn need not, first let us take Zn be a sequence in
Each n.
domain only, because we take A as a neighborhood of A only. Capital A is a collections of Z such that it's a neighborhood of A. Zn need not belongs to A.
Sorry?
So we define A equal to Z belongs to A. Sorry, Z belongs to D such that f of Z equal to 0 in some domain of A only. So some terms of Zn need not contained in A. So we can define also like that.
Yeah, f is 0 in some neighborhood of A. Some points may go outside. That's what.
So need not be Zn all sequence Zn in A. Some of them
Maybe
outside the neighborhood of A. Some Zns are outside the neighborhood of A.
so you mean A may be outside the neighborhood? No. A is actually neighborhood of A means A has to be this. Maybe something is wrong in the construction. Yeah, good point. Okay, maybe what I do, So maybe tomorrow I'll clarify this. Okay, let me work it out. So, yeah.
Also, A is not an open set.
Yeah, I think something is wrong in the construction. Some neighborhood of A. Okay. So I'm sorry for this. Yeah. Okay, maybe tomorrow I will clarify this. Okay. Yeah, please give me some time. So anyway, by assuming, for timing, let us assume that this theorem is valid. So we need to proceed. This proof of this tomorrow. I'll give all the clarification. Anyway, so suppose that f of z is analytic in a domain D, and that Zn is a sequence of distinct points converging to A in D. Now, if f of Zn is equal to 0, then f of z is 0 throughout. Okay. Let us skip this proof. Tomorrow I will clarify this. And
Sir,
by
in the hypothesis, you already taken a sequence. Zn is there in the domain. Which converges to A. That's why Zn belongs to A. Zn A is a non-empty set because already in the hypothesis there exists a sequence Zn which converges to A and f of Zn equal to 0 in the hypothesis.
Yes. So I guess my construction of A and B, maybe there is something wrong. Okay. So that needs to be carefully defined once again. Let me check. Okay. Thanks for pointing out these things. Okay, good. Now this uniqueness principle or identity theorem, these things actually we take two functions, two analytic functions satisfying the same properties, but here f of Zn is equal to g of Zn for each n. Then this they will be actually identically same throughout the domain. Let me see here. I think that statement only we will be using, not the proof. Let us recall this basic result. A limit point of a set D. This Z0 is called a limit point of a set D if and only if there is a sequence of distinct points in D converging to Z0. So this is the basic properties we know, all of us. So now by this result, we can find a subsequence Znk of Zn converging to Z0 in D. So it is happening by that result. Now what happens, by setting this h equal to f minus g, and we apply the hypothesis, we get h of Znk is 0 for each k. Okay. Now by uniqueness theorem, h would be identically equal to 0 throughout the domain, because Z0 is actually inside the domain.
So this.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you. So there is some the writing the B is little differently. You need to write nothing else. The A is set of all A belongs to D such that F is identically 0 in some neighborhood of A. Set B is nothing but set of all A belongs to D such that f of z not equals to 0 for all z in some deleted neighborhood of A. That is the only language.
I think instead of z we should write A, small a.
Yeah. So A belongs to D such that f of z not equals to 0 for all z in some deleted neighborhood of A. If you write, then that ambiguity will be lost.
See, still there is a doubt, like, A is already given some point in the domain. So then what is the meaning of collection of point A in the set?
Okay, if you use that A, you just say set of all z. In your notation, set of all z belongs to A, such that, okay?
Yeah, let me go back. Yes. So if I replace this z by small a, you are saying. Yeah. Then, but in the statement, In the statement, when it says converging to a point A in D, there is a point. Now, how to collect such point A such that f of z equal to 0 in some neighborhood of that A?
See, essentially, you are taking the elements of D
Hmm.
for which f of z is identically 0 in some neighborhood of A.
Hmm.
That is your capital A. Your capital B is nothing but you are collecting the points in the domain D such that f of z not equals to 0
In some deleted
for all z
neighborhood.
in the deleted neighborhood of A. That is the two sets
Yes.
you are distinguishing.
Yes.
And again, you are proving that the set A, B is empty set because of the
Hmm.
connectedness A equals to D. That's all.
Hmm.
That long ways of writing B is little bit tricky. You have to write that.
Hmm.
We are distinguishing two sets.
Yes,
One
yes,
is
yes.
equals to 0, one is not equals to 0, and we are proving that not equals to this
Yeah,
set
I
is an
think
empty
you're
set.
right.
Therefore, your A equals to D.
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
Sir,
Yeah, please.
the set A can be defined like that: Z belongs to D, such that f of Z equals to 0. Means A is the collection of all zeros of D. Whatever is the point in the D, we will consider the zeros of f in the domain D as A. And if that is not a zero, then we will consider that as a set B. Then in that case, it automatically include A, like the proof you gave us.
Mm-hmm.
Like let us consider a sequence of points Z1, Z2 that converges to A. Then we will show that f of A equals to 0. So this will imply that actually small a belongs to capital A. Right, sir?
But you are saying f of A equal to 0.
No, I'm saying that let us consider A as the collection of all zeros of f.
All zeros of f.
Yes. So in that way, actually this will and let us
All
after
zeros
that.
of f, where actually? So that is the construction already on the screen. Collection of all zeros of
there is
f.
no issue about capital A. That set is fine. Capital B is nothing but set of all Z belongs to D such that f of Z not equals to 0 in some neighborhood in the deleted neighborhood of A.
Yes, yes,
Then we
yes.
will prove that our B is empty set.
Hmm.
Therefore, because of the connectedness of D, our A equals to D. That's all. We can always prove that A and B are open sets.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
No.
Maybe tomorrow we can.
Yeah. Tomorrow, let's have more discussion then.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So you can
Okay,
proceed
anyway.
with this with the next application.
Yeah. Sorry, I think let us not waste time on this. Tomorrow I will rectify this. Yes. Anyway, so now we apply this uniqueness theorem to deal certain problems. Okay. So like one example, this is very famous identity. This trigonometric identity sin square z plus cos square z equal to 1. How to prove this using uniqueness principle? So another question also we can deal, like we can ask, does there exist a function f analytic in mod z less than 1 satisfying this relation? Okay, f of 1 over 3n is equal to f of 1 over 3n plus 1 is equal to 1 over 3n. So can we find an analytic function in the unit disk satisfying this? So such problems, actually there are many similar problems, but such problems one can deal by applying this uniqueness principle. Okay, let us see the first one. First one is actually trivial, like this sin square z plus cos square z, we take one function, and the constant 1, we take another function. Then we apply identity principle. Okay, so that is the idea. So solution to example 1. So consider two functions. F of z is sin square z plus cos square z, and then gz is actually 1. So in that domain C. Here domain C is actually the whole complex plane. Then we here what we get, we must get some sequence Zn 1 by n. This is the sequence of distinct points of C converging to the limit point 0. 0 has to be in C in the domain. Then also here f of Zn is equal to g of Zn. Because Zn is real here. For real we know sin square x plus cos square x is equal to 1, we know for all x real. So therefore f of Zn is equal to g of Zn, because g of Zn is 1 and f of Zn is also 1 coming in this case. So therefore for each n they are same. So now we can use uniqueness principle or identity principle, to show that f is identically equal to 0 throughout the domain C. So therefore this identity holds. This is one way to prove it. The second part was, what was the question? Does there exist any function f analytic in mod z less than 1 satisfying this relation? Okay, the answer will be actually no. Again, by uniqueness principle, answer will be no. So there will be such function, only the identity function will be there. So that f of 1 over 3n will be equal to 1 over 3n. But thus this second equality will not hold in that case by uniqueness principle. Let's see. So we cannot find such functions because the function f of z equal to z is the analytic function inside unit disk, and we get a sequence in the unit disk 1 over 3n. Let us take this. One can change to some other, but here this sequence 1 over 3n I have taken, so that this tends to 0 in the unit disk. Now what happens to f of Zn? F of 1 by 3n is actually 1 by 3n. F satisfies this condition. So by uniqueness principle, it is actually f of z equal to 0 is the only such analytic function. All right. So in the limiting sense, yes. So therefore, since these two are not identical, we say that there does not exist any analytic function that satisfies the required identity. So any question here? Okay. So now coming to maximum modulus principle, the statement was already discussed yesterday. So let us recall this statement that this, if f is analytic and non-constant in a domain, then its absolute value has no maximum. Okay, and some other way also, alternately also one can write, or equivalently also one can write all these things we discussed yesterday. So let us consider, let us stick to the first statement here. Now we are going to prove this statement by using contradiction method or contrapositive method. That means we assume that its absolute value has a maximum in D. Then we prove that function is analytic. In fact, the second statement we are going to prove. So this is what it is written. So we shall use the contradiction method to prove this result. Contradiction, when we say, it is actually with respect to the first statement. That means, on contrary, we assume that this modulus of f attains maximum at a point inside domain, and we must lead to a contradiction that f is constant function. That is the idea. What is the idea here? So we need to apply uniqueness principle here. For this, we choose a disk. Look at the picture here. We just choose a disk around Z0 with radius r, and applying integral formula, Cauchy's integral formula, to show that f is constant inside this disk. We'll be proving that. First step is to prove f is constant inside this disk. Now we need to apply uniqueness principle to prove that f is constant throughout the domain. Throughout the domain. So how does it follow? That is the question mark. Then we can say that this this modulus of f cannot attain a maximum at a unless f is constant. So how does it follow? So let us take suppose that constant is c. When we say f is constant in this disk, let us say f is equal to c. Then we take the function gz is equal to fz minus c. Okay, fz minus c. Now g of zn is 0. We can find a sequence of points converging to z0, so that this g of z0 is 0 in this disk. We can find, and yes, we can find, and then then we can anyway. So this explanation is there already in the proof. We will see. So this is the idea just I am explaining. So we can find some sequence converging to z0, so that this sequence are actually zeros of this because of this. Because f is that means gz is actually 0 inside this disk. Whatever we point we take, that will go to 0. So therefore g of zn is also 0 inside this disk. And in whenever g of zn is 0 in this, that means g of zn is 0 in the domain. So whenever this zn converges to 0, so this sequence zn is also in the whole domain, and that is converging to z0. Z0 is also inside the domain. So then uniqueness principle says that g is identically equal to 0 inside the domain. So therefore f is constant throughout the domain. So this is the idea has been used for this step. Sorry. So when we say f is constant in this disk, then identity principle applied like this to conclude that f is constant throughout the domain D. Okay. So this is one very interesting idea. This can be used in many problems in the exercise in any book. So this is explained here. Okay. So let's go to the proof, detailed proof, because as we mentioned, we need to apply Cauchy's integral formula to show that f is constant here. Okay. Now what is Cauchy's integral formula? Because we are on a disk, z minus z0 mod is equal to r. This is circle, the boundary of the disk. Then f of z0 is actually this. This is the Cauchy's integral formula. All right. Now what we do here, we parameterize this. That means z minus z0 mod equal to r. So that means z minus z0 is equal to r e to the power I theta. Okay. So that modulus will be r. Then z will be z0 plus r e to the power I theta. So left hand side f of z0 is already there. Now integral 1 over 2 pi I is there. Then theta will be from 0 to 2 pi. Then z will be z0 plus r e to the power I theta. So therefore numerator f of z is written f of z0 plus r e to the power I theta. Denominator z minus z0 is just r e to the power I theta. Then dz will be ir e to the power I theta d theta. Just parameterizing this. Now you see r e to the power I theta, r e to the power I theta getting cancelled. Iota also getting cancelled. So therefore 1 over 2 pi is there outside, and inside the integral f of z0 plus r e to the power I theta d theta is happening. So this is actually, this has also name Gauss mean value theorem. Or sorry, Cauchy's mean value theorem, I guess, yes. Anyway, so where we use this transformation, z equal to z0 plus r e to the power I theta, this is the parameterization. Okay, this is simple. So now we have this relation f of z0 is equal to 1 by 2 pi times integral 0 to 2 pi f of z0 plus r e to the power I theta d theta. So this identity we will be using. Now we have to take modulus, because our aim is to prove f is constant in the disk. Let's see. the left hand equality, you see it is valid because f of z naught we can take, because that is independent of theta. So f of z naught modulus we take outside, and then this is actually same as f of z naught modulus, this integral. Because 2 pi will get cancelled, so this identity is true. Now f of z naught we proved this integral in the last page, the previous page. So now we take modulus. Now we apply inequality, because modulus we can take inside, and this is actually Riemann integral in that sense, because theta is real. From 0 to 2 pi it is varying. So now modulus of f of z naught plus r e to the power I theta d theta. Okay. So on the other hand, what we see by assumption, so in fact, in one hand we get f of z naught mod less than or equal to this quantity on one hand. The other hand, we will be proving the reverse inequality. So on the other hand, by assumption, actually modulus of f attains maximum at z naught. That means whatever point we take, its modulus, f of that point modulus, will be always less than or equal to f of z naught, because at z naught it is the maximum value. So now using this inequality, we can prove the reverse inequality, like 1 over 2 pi integral 0 to 2 pi f of z naught plus r e to the power I theta d theta is less than or equal to this one. Okay. But what is this? This is actually modulus of f of z naught, already we discussed. So therefore, the reverse inequality also valid. So now combining these two, actually equality holds here. Equality holds. Now when equality, these two integrals are equal, by again properties of Riemann integral, we can take this inside. So then f of z naught modulus, then minus this one we bring other side, f of z naught plus r e to the power I theta modulus. Sorry, I think there is a typo. No, it's correct. So d theta is equal to 0. That means this left hand integral we are bringing to right hand side, then simplifying. This is actually equal to 0. Now you see, integrand is a continuous function. Integrand is a continuous function. Modulus function is actually continuous and non-negative. Why non-negative? Because f of z naught modulus is actually the maximum one. So therefore, this quantity will be always positive, that is non-negative. Okay. So therefore, one of the properties in Riemann integration, so this integrand will be 0. So that means f of z naught modulus will be f of z naught plus r e to the power I theta modulus. This is one for theta varying from 0 to 2 pi. This is one of the properties of Riemann integral. It's a very famous property. If f is non-negative, the integrand non-negative and continuous, then if integral is 0, then that function has to be 0. So now we got this one. Now here you see this analytic function f of z, actually z naught plus r e to the power I theta is z. F of z modulus is actually constant here. So we know if analytic function with constant modulus, that means so here this is happening on this circle z minus z naught mod equal to r. So since r is arbitrary, because r we have chosen arbitrarily, therefore this relation is happening for all points inside and on the circle. Inside and on the circle, because r is arbitrary, we can shrink also, expand also. So therefore, we have an analytic function whose modulus is actually constant. So therefore, it has to be constant. So f is a constant function. Let's say c on this part. Now, because that is the statement it is written, an analytic function with constant modulus in a domain is constant in that domain. Okay. So now whatever I already explained pictorially, so that is given here. Now we just take G equal to f of z minus c, then G is 0 on this circle, sorry, on this disk, because f is equal to c on this disk. So now we can find a sequence of points in this disk such that Zn, that sequence is converging to the center. We can always find, and then since Gz is 0 in the disk and therefore G of Zn is 0 for all n, we have an example here. In the unit disk we can construct for sequence 1 over n. Same way we can construct. Then we get a sequence of zeros of G converging to a point in D. So therefore we can actually apply uniqueness principle for uniqueness theorem for disk here. But of course here D is actually arbitrary domain. We can apply uniqueness theorem for a domain. So then G has to be identically equal to 0 throughout the domain D. That is equivalently f is constant throughout the domain D. So this completes the proof of maximum modulus principle, or the first form of maximum modulus theorem. Yeah. So if you have any question, we can discuss. Please. Or any doubts in this proof? No? Am I audible, Basu?
To this, yes, to this, you are audible.
Okay, good. Okay, since there are no questions, in fact, we can discuss more, at the end, maybe last 10 minutes. But let me go. One question is appearing here. Of course, at the beginning, one of the participants asked, if f is analytic and non-constant in a domain, then when we say maximum modulus principle says that absolute value does not attain a maximum in the domain. But are there any other choices or any other positions where maximum attains? So this question, first question is actually whether this modulus of f of z attains its maximum value on the boundary. This is also no. This statement is also no. Then we can search for extra condition on the hypothesis so that maximum will occur on the boundary. That is actually the second form of maximum modulus theorem. So here this answer to this question is negative. We have an example here. Consider the exponential function on the right half plane. So this is the right half plane. Real part of z is positive. This is the right half plane. And we take the function f of z equal to e to the power z on this. Then what happens? Boundary is actually your imaginary axis. Boundary is imaginary axis. So when we take z equal to e to the power iy, then its modulus is actually 1. In one hand, a modulus of f of iy on the boundary, modulus is actually 1. But if we look at the function, then what is happening? That is diverging. So therefore, on boundary also we are not getting maximum, because on boundary it is giving actually 1, but as a whole function, its modulus is actually diverging, because e to the power iy is modulus is 1 and e to the power x is diverging to infinity whenever x tends to infinity. So which shows that modulus of f is unbounded here on the boundary. So therefore maximum doesn't occur here on the boundary. Okay, in one hand this is 1, other way function is actually diverging to infinity. Unbounded function is unbounded in this sense. Okay. So any question on this part? Example 2. So therefore this question is valid. Is actually no. So even though we have analytic function and non-constant, sorry, there is a spelling mistake here. Non-constant in a domain, then this modulus may not attain maximum value on the boundary. Okay. So one such example is here. Now, therefore, one can ask what is the extra condition. So extra condition is that f has to be continuous and on a closed and bounded set D. On the compact set, f has to be already in the domain, function is analytic. That means it is automatically continuous. But we do not know about the boundary. But on the boundary, closure of that domain, the function has to be continuous. So therefore, it says that if f is defined and continuous on a closed and bounded set D and analytic on the interior, then this modulus of f attains a maximum on the boundary. This is the second form of maximum modulus theorem. Now, proof is very simple because when we say D is, yeah, please.
Please, the previous slide. So is the statement okay? Who shows mod of f is unbounded on the boundary? That means imaginary line.
Yeah, anything is fine, right? So if you don't consider the boundedness of the domain, the theorem fails. That's what the speaker wants
No,
to say.
his question is this statement, modulus of f is unbounded on the boundary. So, yeah, I think it's a good point.
Unbounded in the real part of z greater than 0, that's fine.
Yeah. So I think on the boundary is not correct here. On the boundary, we have already proved that modulus of f is 1.
Yes, sir.
So here modulus of f is unbounded in the half plane, right half plane. That is, yeah. Yes. Thanks. So I'll make this correction. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, today there are a lot of mistakes, typos. Okay. Then, yeah. So what happens here when we say D is closed and bounded, then it is compact set. And we know that, this modulus of f of z is continuous real function on the compact set D, then modulus of f of z attains a maximum somewhere in D. So this is very popular statement from real analysis. Okay. So because modulus function is real function, so therefore we can apply that. So now, according to first form of the maximum modulus theorem, maximum cannot occur at an interior point. We have already proved that. Now, therefore, maximum has to occur on the boundary. Okay. Okay. So this is straightforward proof from real analysis and maximum modulus theorem of the first form. So because first form says that maximum cannot occur inside the domain, so therefore only one chance is on the boundary it will occur. So that's all. What is the time? 16. Okay. Now what happens, because the previous example, there actually domain was not bounded. If we look at the second form of maximum modulus theorem, here you see bounded set is there, then it will occur. But the example what we have taken is actually unbounded. So that is the reason it is not happening. So this means boundedness of the domains in the statement of this second form of this maximum modulus theorem cannot be omitted. Okay, so this is just a remark. So boundedness is very important here. Now, next we compute maximum of an analytic function using the maximum modulus theorem. So one can compute. So let's see one simple example. Of course, depending on function, the challengings are there. But this is a simple function so that we understand how to compute this. So find the maximum of modulus of this function on this compact set, closed and bounded. By second form, this maximum will occur on the boundary. So therefore, how to solve it? Just we take modulus of f of z and square it. Then it is 9 mod z square plus 12 real part of Iz, then plus 4, 2 iota mod square. This is 4. Then 9 mod z square minus 12 imaginary part of z, because this real part of iota z is same as minus imaginary part of z. The simple identity one can verify, and then 4 is already there. Now what happens? By maximum modulus theorem, this maximum of this modulus occurs on the boundary. So therefore, on mod z equal to 3, we need to just put it. So what is happening? F of z mod is actually square root of, square root will come when mod z is 3. This is 3 into 3, 9. So 81 plus 4, that is 85, and minus 12 imaginary part of z is already there. So f of modulus of z, we got this one. Okay, after squaring it, we got this one. Now we are asking for maximum. Maximum means whenever minimum occurs for imaginary part of z, that time maximum for modulus of fz will happen. Okay, straightforward. So this attains its maximum when imaginary part of z attains its minimum, because negative of imaginary part of z is there within the square root. Okay, so on this circle mod z equal to 3 on the boundary. So then what is happening? You can verify that this z equal to minus 3 iota. Z equal to minus 3 iota. So at this point, actually, imaginary part of z will be minimum. You have a circle, imaginary part of z at the bottom, that is minus 3 iota. Because radius is 3, so therefore minus 3 iota it will happen. Just you put it, imaginary part of z is actually minus 3, then 12 times minus 3, so 85 minus 12 times minus 3. If you the 121 is coming, so square root is 11. So therefore maximum is attaining on the boundary by second form of maximum modulus theorem, and here the computation says maximum is 11 for this function and in this region. Okay. Now
Sir, imaginary part value is z equal to 0 if you draw the circle with radius 3 on the real line, on the real axis at 0.3 and minus 3, z value is 0. That means imaginary value of z is 0. If you draw the circle with radius 3 with center 0,
yeah,
it intersects the y-axis at 2 points, the x-axis at 2 points.
yes,
On the x-axis, imaginary values are zeros.
yes,
We need the minimum of imaginary values. Imaginary z is minimum, so that imaginary of z is 0. Actually, z equal to minus 3 plus 3 minus 3i plus 3i. 4 points are
yes,
among those minimum imaginary value.
yes.
Minimum
So
imaginary
whenever-
value is 0.
Yeah, that is what, whenever imaginary part of z is minimum on this, that is actually minus 3. At minus 3 it will be there, right?
Okay.
Isn't
Z
it?
equal to, okay, sir.
At the bottom.
My doubt is, if you substitute imaginary value z equal to 0, we get maximum value.
Z is equals to 0 is not on the boundary, right?
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
See.
Imaginary of z.
No, that is not a boundary point, first of all. Again, if you take that is 0, but that is square root of 85.
Z equal to 3 plus I0. Z equal to 3 plus I0 is a point on the boundary.
3 plus I0. That
Yes,
is
sir.
real 3, right?
Yes, sir.
But minus 3 is less than that.
But that will not give the maximum value.
At minus 3 is less than 0 actually.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
minimum
okay.
is minus 3.
Minimum is minus
Okay,
3.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it is trivial
Thank
from the circle, the bottom. So anyway, so the next application, do I have time? Yeah. So this is minimum modulus theorem. I think this question was also asked yesterday. whether this when we have analytic function, and here actually extra condition will be non-vanishing in the domain, then this modulus of f cannot attain a minimum in D unless f is constant. Okay. So furthermore, the second form is also like that valid. So if f is also continuous on closure of D, because closure of D is compact, then modulus of f of z attains a minimum on the boundary. The same way, but here only non-vanishing, so that 1 over f of z we can define. Then we can apply maximum modulus theorem. That is the idea. So since f of z is non-zero in D, then 1 by f of z is analytic in D. Now we apply maximum modulus theorem actually. So therefore, since f of z attains a minimum at a point z0, if we take, then if and only if 1 over f of z attains a maximum at z0. Okay. So now we apply maximum modulus theorem to this 1 over f of z. Then we can get. Okay. And other things will follow from maximum modulus theorem. Just we apply 1 over f of z. This is valid. Now application 2 is Schwarz lemma. Schwarz lemma, I think with this I will stop and then we can go for discussion. So what is Schwarz lemma? Look at the picture. We have the unit disk here. Radius is 1. Center is origin. Then f is analytic here inside this unit disk given. So that 0 is fixing. 0 goes to 0. Okay. And right hand side is actually closed unit disk. F of z mod is less than or equal to 1 on D. So then what happens? If this is happening, then f of z modulus is actually less than or equal to mod z. This is Schwarz lemma. And further, we can go beyond. The derivative of f at origin is in modulus is less than or equal to 1. That can be also proved. But here you see the equality will hold if and only if. In fact, if equality holds, then f of z is actually equal to az, constant times of z, where that constant modulus is actually 1. This is such functions actually will be valid for this equality. Okay. So this is Schwarz lemma. Okay. So we go for proof. It is actually application of maximum modulus principle, because f is analytic for mod z less than 1 and f of 0 is 0, and Taylor's theorem we can apply, and Taylor's theorem will have this form, because f of 0 is 0, so constant term will not be there. So it will be just a1z plus a2z square plus so on by Taylor's theorem. Now what we do, we take z common. Then we have this a1 plus a2z plus a3z square, so on. And that part we denote it by gz. So f of z we are able to write z times gz, where gz is analytic in D. Okay. So because it's just a power series. Okay. Now g of 0, clearly g of 0 is a1 from this. G of 0 is a1. But what is a1? From f we can get derivative of f at 0. That is a1. Okay. From f, if we make derivative term by term differentiation, of course in power series we are going to discuss in the next class. Term by term differentiation is possible, and one theorem we will be discussing. So that we are assuming here. Then first derivative if we take, then at 0 if we put, this will be a1. So therefore a1 is g of 0 as well as f prime 0. So this actually suggests us to define a function gz, that is f of z over z when z is non-zero, and when z is 0, this is actually f prime 0. This is what the definition of g we are constructing. So because some books they write directly gz like this, but this is the way we must understand, or we should explain. Now what happens? Inside the unit disk, we just take arbitrarily one closed disk mod z less than or equal to R. That is denoted by dr. Now what happened? G is continuous on this closed and bounded set. G is continuous from definition of G. It is continuous. And analytic for analytic inside this. Because for Z not equal to 0, that is there. In fact, it has removable singularity. So it is analytic for mod Z less than 1. Now we can apply maximum modulus theorem for the function G in dr, closed and bounded set. So we find a point on the boundary so that gz mod is less than or equal to g of zr. On the boundary, maximum will occur. So g of zr means f of zr modulus by zr. Zr is non-zero, therefore we apply this function because zr is on the boundary of the unit, on the circle. So this is actually 1 over zr modulus. Why? Because on the boundary, f of zr modulus is less than or equal to 1. Our hypothesis says f of z modulus is less than or equal to 1 on the doesn't matter. So on the boundary of this is actually mod z equal to modulus of f of z equal to 1. So that is happening. F of z mod is actually less than or equal to 1. It is hypothesis. So that we are using. Yeah. So f of zr mod less than or equal to 1. So therefore this is less than or equal to this. And modulus of zr is actually r. This partial, this on the boundary of this disk, the radius r is actually r radius. So therefore gz mod is less than or equal to 1 over r we are getting. So then, since r is arbitrarily chosen inside the unit disk, then what happens? We can take r very close to 1 and we obtain that gz mod is less than or equal to 1. From here it follows because r is arbitrary. So therefore, when gz mod is less than or equal to 1 for all z in D, so equivalently by the definition of G, f of z modulus less than or equal to modulus of z for all z in D. And because of this, again the second part when z is 0, that is f prime 0 modulus, that is bounded by 1 coming here. Okay, so that's all the first part. Second part, the equality part. So if f of z mod is equal to mod z for some non-zero z or f prime 0 mod is equal to 1, these two conditions were there in the equality case, then what happens? Then gz mod is equal to 1 because gz is f of z over z. So therefore this is equal to 1 at some point of D. It is coming. Then what happens? By maximum modulus principle, gz is equal to constant such that modulus of c equal to 1. How does it follow? Who can say?
So what is the question?
So how does this follow? Gz is equal to constant such that modulus of c equal to 1. So how to say that gz is constant?
Mod of gz is 1 at some point in D. And
so what does it say? Maximum modulus principle.
maximum must be on the boundary, not inside.
No. The maximum modulus first form. So when it will have, suppose maximum occurs inside the domain, then the function has to be constant, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that is the reason it is written by the maximum modulus principle, the first form of maximum modulus theorem, Gz has to be constant. And because modulus of Gz is 1, therefore mod C is equal to 1. Now, by definition of Gz, Gz is f of z over z, therefore f of z is z times Gz, but Gz is C constant, so therefore Cz is coming. F of z equal to Cz with modulus of C equal to 1. So this is what we wanted to prove. Okay. So that's all. So next we will be discussing power series tomorrow. So with this, I stop here. And yeah, if we have questions, we can discuss for a few minutes.
Sir, so maximum of G is 1. Maximum of Gz is mod Gz is 1.
Yeah, because modulus of Z is equal to 1 at some point of D.
So how it is maximum?
Because mod of Gz is less than equal to 1. We have already proved that mod of Gz is less than equal to 1.
Oh, yes. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sir, I think there is I think your proof for uniqueness theorem is right. There is no mistake in that. Can you go back?
Yeah, let us go back. We can. Yeah, there is some confusion because a lot of questions came, so I need to clarify very neatly. Therefore, I thought of thinking more deeply so that clearly I can explain tomorrow. So that's the reason I avoided. Let me see.
Yeah, that would be fine, Swadesh.
Yeah.
That would be fine.
But anyway, now session is over. We can have interaction session. We can discuss also, no issue.
Yeah. So we define A and B like this, right? And from corollary, these two sets are open. That one can check. Now we are trying to prove that A is non-empty. So from the hypothesis, we have taken a sequence Zn that converges to A. And since D is an open set containing A, so there will be an open ball, say B, A comma R. Since D is an open set and A is any point in D, so there will be an open ball centered at A that is contained in D. So Zn converges to A. So after some natural number n, all the terms will be in that ball. Right. And f of Zn is equal to 0 for all n. So if I consider the sequence, say M after M, all the elements are in that ball. So if I consider my sequence from Zm and onwards, so that sequence is inside that ball. Now I can use uniqueness theorem, which I prove for this centered at A. So Fz will be identically 0 in that ball. So Fz is identically 0. So that point A is in A.
Yes. A will be in A using that Zn goes to A, and if is analytic means if is continuous. Therefore, f of Zn goes to f of A.
Okay, let me explain one more time what I'm trying to say.
We understood your proof. That is the proof. We are writing in a different language.
Yeah. So there is no need to change. I mean, everything is right.
No, proof is correct. Proof is correct. Only writing the B is different at one place.
No, I think
language is different. Nothing else.
Language is different. It is same actually. It represents same thing. Then only A union B will be the whole domain. Otherwise, no. Language is actually.
So we just wanted to prove that A is non-empty.
Yeah. Anyhow, the speaker would like to give a lot of clarity on tomorrow. Just let us leave that proof. Ms. Pandey.
Okay.
Okay, good. Anyway, so if you have understood, that is good.
Sir, in proof of Schwarz lemma, I want to.
Okay, let me go. Yes.
F dash 0. There we got f dash 0. And next slide.
Yes.
Next. Yes, sir, yes. So mod of fz is less than or equal to z, that is okay. And mod of f dash 0 is less than 1. How it is?
Because by the definition of gz, gz is defined like this. At 0, it is f prime 0. So when we say gz modulus is less than or equal to 1, then automatically f prime 0 mod less than or equal to 1.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. From there it follows.
So, sir, it is true only for radius 1 or for any
Yeah,
radius?
one can generalize certainly to arbitrary radius. Yes.
And image set is also bounded by 1. Mod of
Yeah,
fz.
here. Yes. Any other question? Yeah, if there are no question, we can.
So I think Faroz Bhatt has
Yes, sir.
some question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Faroz?
I don't.
Sir,
Yeah, please.
I had doubt on the slide where you calculated the maximum of that function, maximum on the closed district mods at less or equal to 1.
I see. Okay. Some elementary function,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, here. Is this place?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir,
What is your question?
you have taken the point z equal to minus 3i. So this way, the maximum came out to be 11. Sir, if
Yes.
we take the point z equal to 0 here,
No, z has to be on the boundary point, right? On mod z equal to 3 means what? On the circle. Right?
exactly, sir. Exactly. Thank you, sir.
Maximum is occurring
On the boundaries.
on the circle.
Yes, sir.
So we cannot choose z equal to 0 first of all.
Exactly. Sir. Thank you.
Sir, can you compute minimum value also by this?
Yes. We can compute minimum value also.
So,
Same thing, I think, when we take maximum.
so z equal to 3i, I think.
Yeah, I think 85 minus 36 square root.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
Sir,
Yeah, please.
Yeah, please.
so suppose directly we find the modulus of f of z equal to modulus of 3z like that.
What is that coming?
Value.
Modulus of 3
Equal
times
to-
modulus of z. Triangle inequality you are saying, right?
Yes, sir.
So what is coming? 3 times 3.
2 times
9.
3 plus 2, 11.
9 plus 2. Yeah, in this case it is coming, but always it may not come.
May not come.
In this, because this is just a polynomial, it is coming. Always it may not.
Not this is true for all other cases.
Yeah, not triangle inequalities. Most of the times it gives crude estimate, not the exact maximum.
Okay.
Remember, in some cases it gives, yes.
So are there any questions?
Sir, while applying minimum modulus principle, we need to be careful about this, that the function should not vanish inside the disk, right?
Yeah. We should be very careful.
Okay, but in case the function vanishes inside the disk, so I think we cannot apply minimum modulus principle.
Yeah, we cannot apply. Here, are you getting some point where vanishes?
At z is equal to 2 by 3i, and this is inside mod of z less than equal
2
to
by
3.
3i, yes. Inside, yes. You're right. Right, great. So, yeah, minimum modulus theorem. Yeah, I think Here f of z has to be non-zero in D. That is essential. Yeah, here z equal to 2 iota by 3. Then it is vanishing. Yeah, we cannot apply minimum value theorem. Yeah, minimum. We cannot find minimum here using this. Yes, yes.
So there is any method to find the minimum modulus having f of z equal to 0 in some inside the domain?
F of z equal to 0.
0. It's
Uh,
possible to find a minimum.
if see if f of z is equal to 0 in domain, then how do you find the minimum?
We are taking minimum of modulus of the function, right?
Yeah.
Once it is 0, then we have to
F
remove
of z modulus is 0.
yeah, absolute value of the f, you are taking the minimum.
Yeah.
So in that case, minimum is already is
At
known
that
to you.
point inside the domain. Okay. Understood.
Yeah, that's what. See, why do you want to say that f of z not equals to 0 in D? Because if you take its absolute value, it is always 0.
Always 0. So that
Yeah.
point is the minimum value of the. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So we want to take out the trivial value, trivial cases.
Okay, any other question? Last call. Final call. Yeah.
So if there are no questions, let us thank
Yeah.
Sudesh Kumar Sahu